Hi everyone, it's great to see so many of you here already. We'll be starting in roughly 5 minutes.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. And from wherever in the world you're joining us and giving us a couple of hours of your time, you're welcome. Thank you for being part of this ecosystem. My name is Farzin Shatpur, and I'm the managing director of the supply chain program here at Plug and Play. At Plug and Play, in addition to being the world's largest accelerator, the most active investor, and the largest corporate innovation center, we try to be a source of knowledge for you all. And so today we are glad and we are grateful to Christian and Luca for joining us and for collaborating with us to put up this great event that introduces their great analytic and academic work to talk about supply chains, innovation in supply chains, and disruptions in supply chains. We have a great set of panels and discussions set up today for you. I know the team has done a lot of preparation and it will be going through the agenda with you in a minute. Again, I wanted to welcome you all, and I hope that you will benefit from this as I will do.
Thank you very much, Farzin, for these kind opening words. My name is Claudius Lascavi, and I'm an innovation manager at Plug and Play. I have the pleasure to MC tonight's event, during which we aim to foster knowledge exchange among startups, venture capital firms, as well as practitioners in the logistics industry. But before we get started, I need to point out, and I actually have the pleasure that because of the great interest in tonight's event, we have already maxed out on the capacity on this Zoom enterprise plan. And we have therefore set up a second live stream on YouTube, which you can access via the LinkedIn page of this event. So should you have any colleagues or friends who have trouble signing in because of the maximum capacity, please forward them or make them aware of our LinkedIn page. They will find the YouTube link there. So tonight we are very fortunate to have an outstanding group of speakers with us, from unicorn startups who are really challenging the status quo in the industry, to experts who have been researching and documenting the industry, as well as executives who are leading in the largest logistics companies in the world. So allow me to briefly walk you through today's agenda to share with you what lies ahead before we dive into the content. First up, we'll have a fireside chat with Dirk Reich and moderated by Sebastian Reimann. Then we have 3 panels moderated by Steffen Wagner, Jacqueline Göbel, as well as Harald Ehren. And last but not least, we'll have a quick closing with our friends from Plug and Play. But before we get started, I would like to welcome on our virtual stage the co-initiators, as well as the co-authors of the book, Disrupting Logistics, Luca Graf and Christian. And first up, I would like to bring Luca on stage. Dr. Luca Graf, who's currently the head of digital innovation at the DSV, and he has been leading digital transformation initiatives for over 14 years already in the airline as well as in the logistics industry. So Luca, great to have you with us. And second, Dr. Christian Wurst, who is currently the COO for Food and Environment at Eurofins Scientific SE, and is the former CEO of Panalpina Europe with over 20 years of international leadership experience in the logistics industry. So Luca, Christian, great to have both of you with us tonight, and thank you for joining. And let me ask you a couple of questions about this exciting book project, and let me start with you, Christian. So what has been the motivation for you to actually start this book project?
Thank you, Claudius, and hello, everybody. Well, Luke and I, we go back for quite a while, and he was head of digital innovation at Panalpina, the previous company that got acquired by DSV. And I was the CEO of Europe, and we worked a lot together on exploring cooperation partners, on takeover targets in the digital space, and basically how to make sense of this change and to become an actor as opposed to just a driven company by this. And what we found is that whilst there's a lot of books on digital disruption in general, and some pretty exciting case studies on individual companies, there's not really for the practitioner a lot of material to make sense out of the evolving market space. I mean, we're not talking about only things that hit you in 1 or 2 locations. It's a whole new industry in a way that's evolving. And we found there was a deficit, and this is where we came together, discussed it, and it was really to create new knowledge. But it was clear if this is not from the practitioner for the practitioner, it's not worthwhile. So the idea was born that actually we wouldn't write this book, that we would write it together with the people who are creating this change. And we were very fortunate that we could invite a lot of people to join this project, which it became today.
And we are very fortunate that you brought so much knowledge together. Thanks, Christian. So Luca, from your perspective, what is the concept of this book?
Yeah, first of all, hello everyone, and thanks for the great participation and for joining at tonight's or this morning's event, whether you are. the concept you said, Claudius. So as mentioned also by Christian, it's a book from practitioners for practitioners. It's a book about the digital transformation in logistics, and we really wanted to involve those who are driving this change. So be it founders, investors, digital leads from incumbents, from logistics companies, board members. And at the end, we succeeded in getting 26 co-authors who describe in 21 articles about how technology is used to drive efficiencies and improve the customer experience. There's a lot happening in the industry. Customer expectations are changing, and we see a huge potential, all of us, what can be still improved. So be it in the back office, in the front office, in the warehouse operations, during the transportation. And we wanted to give an overview of what is happening, and we want to inspire on how technology can be used to improve, and also want to motivate everyone in the industry to make use of it, to actively make use of technology. So it's at the end, it's a call also for collaboration and exchange, knowledge exchange, and which is key at the end to leverage the efficiencies.
Thanks, Luca. Christian, Luca just mentioned that you brought together, I think, 26 authors, and we really have like outstanding participants, co-authors of your book. How is the book actually structured?
Well, it has three parts really. The first one, it starts to analyzing the key change drivers. So process automation, asset utilization, pricing transparency, and supply chain visibility. And there's a contribution for each of them. And then it dives in the second part into the different business models and solutions in the various part of this new industry, from last mile delivery services to e-commerce, logistics, rate comparison on marketplaces, digital freight forwarding, software as a service, asset tracking solution, big data solutions, warehouse automation, etc., etc. In the third part, we then look at the people specifically who drive this change, the key players behind it. And basically, there's the venture capitalists, the incumbents in the large 3PLs, who are being, of course, massively challenged by this new technologies, but also the carriers and the startup managers themselves. All these people, they come together, and there's a chapter on each of them. The book is targeting both managers from the larger logistics service providers to explain them how are they being challenged and disrupted, but at the same time, and it goes, of course, also for the shippers and carriers, but also to the ones who drive this change as the disruptors themselves from a technology perspective.
Very interesting. I think the structure of the book is then also reflected in our agenda for today and the way that the panels are structured. Luca, last question. So 26 authors, as mentioned before, very renowned. Was it actually easy to get them all on board for this project?
Yeah, good question.
I don't lie.
You could ask yourself whether it's not easier to write a book by yourself, so just you and yourself in one room, instead of getting several co-authors on board and align them all on a common topic and structure. But with this topic, that was not much of a challenge, because everyone we contacted was really inspired by the idea. And to write something in common about this, it's at the end a super opportunity using technology in logistics. And all these people are working on it, so they were happy to contribute. And and that motivated all of us. Technology is a fascinating topic. And as always, if you have already grouped together, it's not that difficult to convince the next one to join. So we're really happy to have brought this group together, and that we could convince key players in driving this change in this industry to join.
Great. Thanks to both of you for initiating the project and also being co-host to us for us tonight. We'll come back to you at a bit later stage tonight. But first of all, and our first point on our agenda will be our executive fireside chat, which is moderated by Sebastian Reimer. Many of you know him as the editor-in-chief of DVZ, so the Deutsche Verkehrszeitung, which is very known, especially in the DACH region. And some of you have maybe even had the honor to be interviewed by him on his famous red sofa. So Sebastian, thank you for joining us today, and over to you.
Claudius, thanks a lot. I hope everybody can hear me. Yeah, sounds good. Well, I would like to introduce Dirk Reich. Dirk, good to have you here on the show.
Good to talk to you, Sebastian.
Very good to have you. Let me introduce you real quick. You have a long legacy in the logistics industry. You've been with Kühn & Nagel for about 20 years, I think. You have had many senior management positions there in contract logistics and other parts of the business. You have been the CEO of Cargolux, a freighter airline. And since a couple of years, you are a well-known board member with a lot of companies, also with some of the incumbents, DFDS, for example, or Imperial, but also with some of the newcomers. If you look at Lockhart, SkyCell, or Instafreight, for example. Now, if we look at the industry, and there has been mentioned that a lot of differences and a lot of changes are really occurring. And if we look at automotive first, for example, as an example, we have Tesla there. They are worth more on the stock market now than all the old guys, all the old German car makers, for example, all together. And I mean, they're really kind of disrupting this industry. Do you see a company like that? Do you see a disruptor like that in the logistics industry as well?
Yes, if you go back the last 5 years, we have seen more than $30 billion invested in startups. And most of the money goes either into the last mile or it goes into transportation exchanges. So looking in those two categories, I think the one disruptor most spoken of and most influencing both the old economy and the new economy is Flexport. With a lot of money being invested and everybody is watching them. There are others more, but if you ask me to just name one, I think Flexport is the company that most either use as a benchmark or as a threat or as a role play.
Okay. What do they do different than the incumbents? I mean, they are a freight forwarder in the end as well, right?
Yeah, they are a freight forwarder as well. I think they start without a history. So sometimes it's an advantage to not have a history, but to start with a white piece of paper. And they have a lot of money that they do invest into technology and very focused. At the end, competition will play out. It's a combination of money and people. It's still the same old business model, but they have a chance to not have any history, and they start with a blank piece of paper and have a lot of cash being invested.
Mm-hmm. Is money, is capital kind of the future key for growth in the logistics industry? I mean, with all this digitization, for example, of course, there is a lot of need for extra money. There needs to be invested a lot of money. Is that kind of the future key for success?
From my point of view, and I might be a little black and white here, but it's either digitize or die. Mm-hmm. And there will be, and there are big players. You take DHL, Kühn & Nagel, Maersk, or players from outside the industry like Shell. They're all characterized by lots of money, and they will be able to digitize. So there is no doubt that those players will continue to survive. And then there are those that are primarily fueled by venture capitalists, but also by some corporate venture capital. And those being the startups, they have a great chance to also survive. The threat will be those in the middle, those players of the old economy that don't have the profitability today, that don't have the financial power. So yes, it will come down to money. You need to be profitable to be able to invest in digitization, or you need to have the venture capital to go in there. If you have none of both, stuck in the middle, then you'll be driven by the increased speed of consolidation that I see because of digitization and because of all the money that is being spent into technology development at both the profitable big players, but also the startups.
If we stay with the medium-sized companies for a second, I mean, what about cooperation? Is that a way for them to go forward and to succeed in this new environment?
Definitely is, if they have the capacities, both management-wise and money-wise, to go ahead. And it's not just these big companies I mentioned. If you look at smaller companies, take, for example, take a Fiege, to be not a big one. They have successfully set up this F-Log Ventures, and they look for corporations. Some they invest, some they just partner in. I think this is a very excellent example of a more regional, strong German player, and it can go down into very small players. But you need to have the freedom of doing it. If you're under huge financial pressure and you're in the Red Sea, you cannot afford it. And you need to have the, I would say, young management, at least young in brain, that takes up those ideas and that has the right mixture between experimentation, risk-taking, and profit maximization on the other side.
If we stay with Fiege for a second, I mean, they have just done a deal where they sold their air and sea freight business to a US company and really want to stick with their contract logistics business now. On the other hand, we have seen Kühne + Nagel as one of the very large players in the industry now getting even more with the Apex deal in China into air freight. So they are now, I think, number one in sea freight for sure, but they will probably be number one for air freight as well. So it seems to be that there's kind of a getting down to the core business kind of. Is that something we could see more in the next couple of months and years?
I mean, definitely the KN Apex acquisition is a signal there, and also DSV with Panalpina that goes in that direction. But still, if you look into take the shipping line, take the Maersk. Yeah, they all have their core business, but all still want to be a one-stop shop for their customers, for the different customer groups. So yes, there is a concentration on those businesses that make more money, but at the other side, everybody still wants to be the one face to the customer. So I see this as a short-term trend, and not as the one and only trend that we have today. There are other examples of, take for example a Shell. Yeah, they have no specialization in either air freight, sea freight, and they now invest big time into anything energy related. I think they've done around 75 investments in the last years. Out of them, some are in logistics. But also Maersk, if you look into their startups, Maersk Growth has more than 20 activities, and that's not all linked to the shipping business. So I'm still a believer that there is not only that focus, there is a room for some very focused players, but others will branch out and incorporate the digitization in a one-stop shop model. And these big players like DHL, KN also, to a big extent, DSV, take UPS, even that they come from a parcel business, but still they provide the bigger solutions for those industry segments they serve. So I'm skeptical whether it's a clear trend. I think it's a wave, but as everything, it goes to specialization, then we'll move. Then we'll see some moves where other players add businesses that nobody has thought that would belong to that company in the future.
Yeah. Well, we only have 10 minutes for our short fireside chat. Maybe one last question. We started out with the startups, with Flexport. Let's end with these startups. Do you see them really getting into the M&A business as consolidators and buying other startups, or even maybe buying one of the medium-sized incumbents in freight forwarding or something like that?
Definitely, I do. I mean, there's a logic of multiple expansion. They've got really high multiples and a lot of money. And investors are not all very smart. You've seen some startups doing small acquisitions with a low price, just increasing the turnover. They're not anymore a startup. They buy classical business, not digital business. But those investors who don't know the market, they just take the turnover growth and add the high multiple on the higher turnover. So quite a few startups that are not that strong in their core business, they try to achieve a higher valuation just by adding business. Now, future will show whether that is also a road to profitability, and if minus and minus makes plus, that's the key question for the future.
Not only in logistics, but also in general. Thank you very much, Dirk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for moderating, and thanks a lot also to Dirk for these great insights. Have a good evening. At this point in time, we would like to use this opportunity to also share a little more about the co-host, which is Plug and Play tonight. And for that, I would like to introduce our director here in Hamburg, Salah Faridi. since out of Hamburg, we are orchestrating all our supply chain activities in Europe. So Salah, over to you.
Thank you, Claudius. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have a couple of participants today, and exciting to see the interest. I would love to. My name is Salah Faidi. I'm heading our operations here in Hamburg, which is our European headquarters for our supply chain and logistics activities. And I would love to give you a little introduction about Plug and Play, what we do, and why we are also here, for example, connecting also DSV with interesting innovations and startups. So it's all started in the 90s, where our founder and CEO, Saeed Hamidi, was at the right time at the right place. So coming from traditional business background, he was also involved in the real estate business, and he owned real estate in Silicon Valley, where he had the unique opportunity to see and rent out office space to companies like Google, PayPal, and Dropbox, and see them grow, and also have the unique opportunity to invest in some of these. Meanwhile, we invested in over 1,000 of these sort of companies, of which you will see a couple of highlights here on the right side, like Customer, Applyboard, and many more who have been very successful during the past years. And to give you a little insight how we develop now, we can be basically described into 3 pillars. So obviously the venture capital part, which we are the most active investor in Silicon Valley with over 200 investments per year. We have the corporate innovation part, where we connect the world's largest corporations with the best startups and tech companies out there, and also help them running their innovation labs or being just an extended arm of the innovation units. And then we have the acceleration platform, which goes hand in hand, where we foster pilot projects between startups and corporations. All of this is done on over 30 locations, of which you see the yellow dots, which are our supply chain logistics locations, headquartered in Silicon Valley. In 2019, we added Northwest Arkansas, focusing more on the retail side with JB Hunt, Tyson Food, and Walmart, and Hamburg as the European part for the supply chain network. And last year, we added Toronto together with BASF. We do basically innovation not only in supply chain, but also in other fields. So we cover over 16 different industries, of which, for example, like InsurTech, health, media, and enterprise tech, or brand and retail. Today, I would like to focus a little bit and explain to you about our supply chain platform, where we really try to represent the end-to-end supply chain. So from the mine up to the last mile in retail. And it's amazing to see not only the collaboration between these corporations and the startups, but also between the corporations themselves, because a lot of them have certain relationships together. And the challenges that they might have in between can be solved with a startup that can come in between and help them to be more efficient, more cost saving as well. But why collaborating with startups? I mean, there's specific reasons. There are like efficiency, cost saving, and also understanding like the future trends. I brought 2 examples from our acceleration platform. One is Shippo has been recently in the news of raising $45 million at a $495 million valuation, been part of our program in 2014, and has been connected to various different corporations from the supply chain. And another one is Prevedere, which is a predictive analytics startup, and not anymore a traditional startup, but way bigger than that, basically. They have even managed, for instance, one of the large beverage producers to save $9 million on their costs through forecasting management. What's next? Out of supply chain Europe, definitely green supply chain. We, together with our partners, we are focusing this year to understand how technology can help us to reduce the carbon footprint. A lot of our partners have the ambition to become carbon neutral. That goes hand in hand together with our initiatives around new energies, especially hydrogen. So if you are interested in hydrogen, please reach out. We hope to have great news within this year to announce. And one of the projects that we are getting into, which due to my background somehow making me very proud, is the maritime platform, which we hope to launch this year as well. Last but not least, I would like to take this opportunity, if you would like to understand more about our activities and how we work together with our corporate partners in Europe, like Shell, DB Schenker, DSV, Dell Technology, and 2W, please join us for our expo. Book your seats. You will also receive a message at the end of this event with a little registration code. We have limited seats, so be quick. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Thank you very much. Back to Claudius.
Thank you, Salar, and certainly an exciting event to attend. We'll also get back to that event, especially with reference to the lineup and some of the speakers towards the end of today's session. Following the structure of the book, our first panel tonight is on the topic of the driving forces behind the digital disruption. And for this, I am very happy to hand over the word to our moderator, Stefan Wagner, who is the Global Head of Transportation and Leisure at KPMG, and who is also a co-author to the book, Disrupting Logistics. So thank you for joining, and over to you, Stefan.
Thank you very much, Claudius, and thanks for having me. First of all, I'm so excited to host the first panel with great panelists, which I'm happy to introduce in a moment. First one on the virtual stage here is Wolfgang Lehmacher. Wolfgang is the former head of supply chain and transport industries at the World Economic Forum. Wolfgang, can you put on switch on your camera? Here you are. Thanks for being here. Next one is David Nothacker. He is a co-founder and CEO of Sender. David, welcome on stage. Hello. And last but not least, Sui Schreiber, the founder and CEO of Freightos.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for being here on our panel. Maybe start with you, Wolfgang. In your article about digitization and automation of logistics processes, you indicate that the use of technologies like artificial intelligence or RPA, robotic process automation, can lead to reduced shipping costs and custom costs of 15 to 30% approximately. Do you have real-life examples of that, where those cost savings or time savings have been achieved?
Stefan, thanks for the question. And yes, of course. And I think that the numbers are moderate. So there are higher estimates in the range of 40% and more. If we take an example, as you mentioned, robotic process automation, which are computer programs to, in fact, automate rule-based routine processes and combine this with optical character recognition, natural language processing, and artificial intelligence, we can build very powerful tools. They can anticipate, for example, documents or such as invoices. They can compare this with supplier performance, for example, and then trigger in the accounts payable system a payment without any human intervention. So, and this is happening already at a high speed in the back offices. So the first, I would say, mainstream application of such solutions are in accounting, but we can easily see that you can also transfer these kind of processes or these kind of tools, which are bots, in fact, to a process like customs clearance. And see, you take customs information, you compare it to the tariffs, you issue an invoice, and then on the importer side, you have the same process as I described it before, fully automated. If it's well done, zero error. People speak about 40 to 70% reduction in time, and sometimes even 90%. There are many use cases out there.
Okay, well, that's amazing. Thanks for those insights, Wolfgang. David, your article is about supply chain visibility and exception management. Can you briefly explain what those two terms mean to you?
Sure. I think there are many definitions of supply chain visibility. The one I like, very basic, it's the sharing of relevant information between supply chain partners. Now, you might think that in logistics, which is a huge industry and the backbone of many industries, we have a good level of supply chain visibility, like you do when you order pizza or a taxi, where you know where your pizza or the taxi driver is. I think that in logistics, it's still a big challenge, especially to have end-to-end visibility, and the exception handling part to that, which can be defined as the management of exceptions, is also something that is at the very beginning in terms of potential, because we're still struggling very much to establish end-to-end visibility throughout the supply chain.
Exactly. I think Sui, he has encountered that problem also over the last couple of years. But Sui, your article is about, pricing transparency in the logistics industry. And well, what you say clearly is that the forwarding industry has for a long time lived pretty comfortably from the price opacity in the market. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, yeah, sure. This industry has kind of behaved very differently to other industries, and it's remained very offline and very opaque. That's starting to change in a very positive way at last. But we do a survey. In fact, we just in the last few days, we published our annual survey on price quotes from freight forwarders. So what we do every year is we take a company and it requests a simple price quote for an ocean shipment from China to US, one of the world's biggest trade lanes. And we send that to the 20 biggest freight forwarders in the world. We've been doing this, I think, for 5 years now. And the first year, we got 0 instant quotes. So the average time for a quote was more than 3 days. More than 3 days for a price quote. The worst time from a very famous freight forwarder, who I will not name, was 30 days. So simple price quote, China to US, took 30 days. This year, a significant improvement. We had a handful of the top 20 who were able to give an instant quote. Not a majority, but a few of them were able to give an instant quote on their website. And the average time, consequently improved. But still, some freight forwarders taking days to give a simple price quote. In an age where people, don't want to wait for, most people won't wait for 1 minute, for information now. If on a website, you don't wait for 1 minute, and then freight forwarders are still many times asking you to wait for 2 or 3 days for a simple price quote on a major trade lane. It's kind of unbelievable. And then when you compare the quotes, you see on average a 30% discrepancy in the very same price quote. Sometimes you see 100%. So, you don't see this in any other industry, right? In every other industry, you get the prices instantly, and the spreads are much smaller.
Well, that's amazing indeed, yeah. But the development shows that companies like Freightos or Sender, they serve as a catalyst for the industry to innovate and digitize, so that those processes get improved, at least at some point. But Wolfgang, you mentioned the great advantages of technology in logistics processes. However, the transport industry is pretty much driven by physical transport capacity and how to manage them. So what are the major hurdles from your perspective in the implementation of those technologies?
The biggest hurdle for me is culture. I heard a lot about the nature of the industry. So there is on the one hand, a massive collaboration culture, but on the other hand, it is a manual industry. And the reason is not because the people like the paper. If we think about international transport, there is still a lot of need for paper. A lot of countries don't accept digital documents. And this is, I would say, also a hurdle. Another hurdle is, and we heard that already from David and Sui, is a lack of transparency and visibility. So there is no full set of data which allows us to build on and use analytics to automate, because the analytics stand between the data and the automation. What I mean is, what we need is first end-to-end visibility of a shipment, of a transport, and then we can implement our analytics, which tells us a lot of things. For example, Descriptive analytics tells us that something went wrong. Diagnostic analytics tells us why. Predictive analytics tell us what may happen next and what we could do next. And prescriptive analytics give us the final recommendation for automation. But you see, this is a long process. And considering that we have not yet cracked the nut and took all the paper out of the supply chain, have not cracked the nut to connect all our system and have mandatory data exchange interfaces, right, shows us that the hurdle is probably in the journey, and we need to accelerate this journey, but it is, as it is a very collaborative, multi-stakeholder industry, it is a collective effort, which is also a challenge.
Okay, follow up on what Wolfgang just said, David. How can a company like Sender help mitigate, those challenges from a physical industry into a digital one? Because unlike banking, where most processes have already been for a long time digitized, this is not the case in transport. So how can a digital forwarder like Sender help the industry to move forward?
It's not that easy, and to be completely honest, harder than I initially expected. The biggest challenge, in my opinion, logistic is not developing the technology. It's making sure it's adopted, it is used. There's still a lot of fear to use something new. 20, 30 years, pen and paper, fax machine, and maybe emails have worked really well. Why not use API integration, fancy interfaces, and some level of automation? And that are not always seen as value generating, but really additional work that we put on the shoulder. So how do we address this? And also for us, it was a learning process. I want to give you a quick example. When I started Sender a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, we had the hypothesis, we have an API integration with shippers on one side, we have our app for the truck drivers on the other side, end-to-end visibility, no problem. We quickly realized that on the trucking side, it's on both sides, but let's take the trucking side for a minute, it was not as easy. Not all truck drivers had a smartphone. 48 years is the average age in Germany. And if they have a smartphone, it's a private smartphone, and they don't want to use it to help their boss, that they don't maybe always like. And then even if you convince them to use their smartphone with a McDonald's voucher, it's not guaranteed that their operating system runs your software and that you can get tracking when they're on the phone with 2G. That data and voice is not always the same. So we said, okay, it's a learning, it's not working. Let's try the next. What did we do? We bought a lot of phones, installed our app, put in a SIM card, and shipped the phones ready to use to the trucking companies that we're running for regularly. I said, okay, now it should work. Not the case. Why? Because in the evening, some truck drivers don't want to get tracked. So they took out the battery in the SIM card, and then good luck putting everything together again. So what the learning was, we bypassed the human and now are tracking most of our transport directly with the telematics system from the truck, bypassing the human aspect. Where this is not possible, and concluding my very long answer, is you either have to educate the participants to use technology, and this takes a lot of time. You need to trust to get there, or you try to bypass it like we did with GPS tracking, where we then now directly integrate with the device or the equipment, in our case, the truck.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive. And building up on what David just said on land transport, let's look to another modality, maybe air freight. So I saw last year freighters put lots of effort in digital air cargo. Could you share some background on that and your learnings from that?
Yeah, specifically, we have an affiliated company, Web Cargo, based out of Barcelona, which has been working with the air freight forwarders for over a decade. We have a lot of market share. We work with about 2,000 freight forwarders who represent about a third of the world market are using Web Cargo. Now, till 2 years ago, it was all done in spreadsheets. So we were getting spreadsheets from the airlines and then helping the freight forwarders to manage these spreadsheets. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it, especially when you compare it to air for passengers. I don't know if people realize, but the digitization in a way of passenger travel for airlines started in 1963. That's when American Airlines started Sabre and started doing some kind of electronic booking in the 60s. And here we are, as of 2018, all of air cargo was booked through phone calls and emails, manually. But it started to change. In 2018, the first airline to have an API which we could integrate was with Lufthansa. And then last year, Air France KLM and the IAG group, British Airways Iberia. And then in 2020, it really started to take off. We had more and more airlines. We've recently added Qatar and Etihad and Delta. And it's been amazing to see finally when you have enough airlines. Still many airlines don't have an API, but now we've got about a dozen or more big airlines who've got proper APIs, real-time dynamic pricing. And the number of bookings on our platform has grown 1,000% in the last year. So it's growing very, very rapidly, which has been very exciting to see that finally air cargo is becoming a digital industry.
That's good to hear. Thanks for that. Wolfgang, we often hear about supply chain transparency, end-to-end visibility in the supply chain. But when you look closer, you soon notice that there are lots of stakeholders, sometimes even competitors, which restrict the supply chain from being transparent because there's no eagerness at their end to share data, or they're simply not ready to share data with competitors. Do you, from your experience, have examples of how that challenge could have mitigated, to establish a share of data despite the various stakeholders and competition?
There are examples, and I believe the most impressive example is TradeLens, where you have 70% of the world ocean container volumes on one platform. And these are all competitors that bring this volume on. I also think that we have more data sharing now, much more than we had 3 years ago. It was kind of unthinkable that ports, competing ports like Hamburg or Rotterdam exchange data, but also that has happened about 3 years ago. I have to admit, and I hear clearly the messages from Svi and David that the world is far from being perfect. But as I said, it's a journey, and the industry will get there. There is more and more awareness that we will not be able to connect in an increasingly connected, digitized world as an industry if we cannot accelerate our digitization. And I think that's where the pressure is coming from. And also individual players see that their silo automation, silo digitization doesn't yield the result. Just take an example of an automated terminal. You can have an automated terminal that runs wonderful and perfectly like a Swiss clock. But if the process before and after is not synchronized, a manual terminal is better. And that's why because humans, as we know, if we are asked to do so, we have a certain margin for a while to work harder and faster, right? And an automated terminal cannot. So if we really want to have the efficiencies out, we need to collaborate. And this is the currency of collaboration is data. So we need to get better there. Then there is the pressure coming from sustainability. We cannot reach our carbon emission reduction goals if we don't try everything to optimize our processes. And this is, as we all know, not enough, but it is already something. So I think that the world is better than we think, but it's unfortunately far from being perfect from a digitization perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So David, Wolfgang mentioned the sharing of data as a prerequisite, obviously, for an improved visibility in the supply chain. Getting back to the subject of your article, exception management, do you have examples in mind of successful data sharing which can be used for such an exception management?
Sure. And I think that we're still at the beginning. We will see the power of data and also what then comes out of it, including exception management in the next couple of years. Yeah, but we just at the beginning of something that I'm very excited about, because as we build this foundation of data, we can unlock so many opportunities that I think even we digital players still don't realize how much value that can generate. If you want to share with you one example of how we're using exception management at Sender is with predictive demand. So what we are piloting right now is when our network that we pre-plan, combining loads of different customers get disrupted. For example, there's an unloading at 8 p.m. somewhere, and the follow-on load at 10 p.m. just next door gets canceled, for example. Here, we're working on predictive demand, calculating, is it better to stay and wait for the next day, or maybe use the last 1 or 2 hours driving time a driver has to position the vehicle somewhere else where the next morning there's a high probability or higher probability to get the load that then returns back to where the truck was coming from. So this is just a few ideas that we're currently developing. We need much more data. We need to share much more until we can really unlock them fully. But that's why I'm so excited. It's still all ahead of us.
Thanks. That's very helpful, David. Claudius, welcome back.
I'm very, very sorry. I love to listen to you. Super interesting. I'm very, very sorry to interrupt you at this point in time. But we have to continue with the agenda. I'd like to re-emphasize what all of you have mentioned, that collaboration is very, very important and that we are just at the beginning. So Stefan, Wolfgang, Sui, and David, thank you very much. And I'm very much looking forward also to reading your chapters in the Disrupting Logistics book.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Our next panel is about to get a bit more technical, as we're going to look closer at the business models that are actually disrupting existing logistics solutions. And since I was also very fortunate to be part of the trial runs, I know we are also talking a bit about magic here. And for this, I am very happy to welcome our moderator for this panel, Jacqueline Göbe from the German business news magazine Wirtschaftswoche, and give the word over to her. Jacqueline, are you here? And can you promote and start your video?
Yes, I think I'm here now.
Yes,
it took a while to connect it again, so.
Perfect. We can hear and see you perfectly. So over to you, and thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm very happy to moderate this panel. So after hearing about the factors that drive disruption or that the hurdles for disruption, like truckers not having smartphones, we would like to talk now about the state of disruptions and what it means for business models. So we all know new players, new technologies, they can change all structures. That's what change is about. So to make it short, our topic now is how do technologies change the way the logistic makes money. So with me on the panel now are Johannes Plehm, founder of 7 Senders. Let's manages to put on his camera.
You can see me, right?
Yes, there
Hi,
you
Jacqueline.
are. Hi,
Great to be on the call.
nice talking to you again. And with me as well is Philipp Ortwein, founder of Instafreight.
Hey, Jacqueline.
Hello to you too. Raffaello De Andrea, he is the co-founder of Kiva Systems, that is now Amazon Robotics and also of Verity.
Hello, good afternoon.
And with us should be Basil Aid as well from Lucabox. Hi.
Hi,
hi. So I think it's safe to say that all 4 of you would like to be disruptors to the industry. So maybe before talking about the details and to get to know you all a little bit better, how about a quick elevator pitch? So what's your business model and who would you like to disrupt? Maybe let's start with Basil from Lucabox.
Cool, thanks, Jacqueline. Yeah, so
So Lucabox is pretty much a last mile digital forwarder, specifically on kind of like the parcel side. So when we started to engage with retailers early on, we initially thought that maybe they wanted a marketplace. So something where kind of retailers and carriers can potentially be matched up and kind of through like a layer of technology. And quickly throughout that discussion, we realized that actually what retailers want and what shippers want is pretty much for us to just manage that very, very last mile. Pretty much kind of take that onus and just kind of take care of it for them and have them focus on their core product. And so that's kind of what we did. We pretty much kind of like own the contracts with the carriers, the different asset owners, and we own the contracts with the customers. And we kind of just manage that entire last mile. We provide a layer of digital technology that allows orders to seamlessly go from the retailer to the carrier, providing insights, analytics, and kind of just managing that whole process for them, but also giving them kind of the visibility that maybe they may want to kind of track orders or kind of review things.
I'm not sure, is it only me or someone else can't hear him all the time? I think your connection sometimes gets lost.
Okay.
I had no problem hearing him.
Okay, then it's me. So I'm sorry. So still, I hope everyone has a good overview now what Lucabox does, and maybe let's turn to Johannes Klein. You're in the last mile as well.
Hi, Jacqueline. Yeah, that's correct. So what is 7 Centers doing? We are the leading delivery platform to ship parcels in Europe. What we do is basically to connect all local last mile carriers, all local last mile networks into one virtual carrier network. So if you look on Europe from space, you see basically in every region different carrier companies operating. They usually specialize in different regions and within the regions in different services. The problem is a bit that they are not really connected. So they're also limited to those regions, limited to those services. And we basically unlock them for shippers, our customers, so they can use in every country, in every region across Europe, the optimal local last mile carrier with a minimum of complexity, because it's a one-stop solution going through us, the 7 Centers.
So what would you say? Who are you disrupting then?
Disruption is always like a big word, right? So, but we definitely disrupting the chain to ship parcels in Europe. There are companies like the big pan-European parcel providers. One is yellow, the other one is more brownish. Starts with U, ends with PS. And yeah, basically they are offering at the end the same service, bringing parcels from A to B. We are doing the same thing. We bring parcels from A to B, just in a different and way better approach.
So Philip Ortwein, then you're in the road business, so to say. Do you want to get rid of brown and yellow as well?
Well, I guess we're having sort of the same target. I'm not too sure if like UPS is part of that, but the yellow friends are for sure. No, I mean, like what we are doing, we are a digital logistics company, basically focusing on the long haul overland transportation. So it's not last mile. And what we do is effectively we connect shippers, so anyone who has a load to be shipped, and carriers who like own and operate assets directly via our platform. And the key difference here to a pure marketplace is that we are the actual contractual party. So we are having a contract with the shipper, we're having a contract with the carrier, and we make sure that the transaction actually happens. And by doing so, we basically increase the transparency of what is happening there. Let it be also visibility, we were talking about the whole tracing part, and also efficiency, while then also reducing cost, because this is all way more efficient. Today, we are already serving around 2,500 shippers, out of which, I mean, there's a long tail of like mid-sized companies, but including blue chip companies, and are connecting them to a bit more than 25,000 carriers who are doing business with us basically on a regular basis.
And then maybe to Raffaello, what would be your elevator pitch?
Yeah, I mean, ours is pretty simple. We provide a complete integrated inventory system powered by fully autonomous drones, like the one that you see behind me. And we enable our clients, whether they're big box retailers, 3PLs, or manufacturers, to reach zero error warehouses. So, I mean, doing that has a whole bunch of advantages. reduce labor, equipment costs, scrap, obsolescence, write-offs. We can improve P&L by reducing lost inventory and stockouts. We can, decrease carrying costs because you can eliminate the need to carry unnecessary overstock. You can identify discrepancies in real time before issues escalate. We can do cycle counts much faster to make sure that you have the things that you need them at the right time when you need them. And at the end, the most important part is the customers. They're happier when your deliveries are on time. And we do so by getting rid of something that people really hate to do, and that is collecting data in these huge warehouses, sometimes being at great heights to do so. And we're also very happy to work with Yellow and Brown.
All of you are working with Yellow and Brown. So what I really like about this panel is that we kind of have the whole logistic process here with us. So from the warehouse to the last mile, to the door, if you want so. So maybe I would start again with the warehouse. So at the beginning of the supply chain, so to think. You just mentioned a lot about costs and overstock, but I know that sometimes you talk about magic too when you talk about logistic processes. So what about that? Where can magic be found in a warehouse?
Well, I mean, I think technology certainly looks magical, right? The famous quotes, all have to do about, technology seeming like magic. I think it's magic when it works.
So when the shelf magically disappears.
Yeah, I mean, that was, my first company, Kiva Systems, which is now Amazon Robotics. It was magic in the sense that you have these folks picking, and the shelves magically appear in front of them. They pick the things out of the shelves. They scan them, they put them in a box, and by the time they turn around, there's a new shelf that's magically appeared in front of them. Of course,
background now makes you look like a magician as well.
Correct. So it's magic, but it has to work. When you have 1,000 mobile robots running around 24/7, if they stop working, if the mean time between failure is 24 hours, which is what it was when we started Kiva, you'd have 1,000 of them breaking down every day. So technology can be magical only if it works all the time.
So you just mentioned robots, and I know there's a lot of talk or maybe also fear about the role of robots in logistics in the future. So I know you don't believe that robots take over, but what's your point of view? How will robots and humans work together in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a great synergy, right? Robots, autonomy, machines, they're very good at doing things that are repetitive, dull, dangerous, the 3Ds of robotics. Human beings, why should they be doing any of those things? They can bring value in so many other ways. So I'm not concerned about robots, machines, autonomy taking away jobs that people don't want to do in the first place. There's more opportunities for folks to be involved in value-added operations.
So you just mentioned the robots are doing the D tasks, the dull tasks. So what kind of tasks are the humans doing then?
Well, so inside warehouses, I can tell you what it isn't, is going at great heights and scanning things, right? That's just something that a machine can be doing. So it's things that really people shouldn't be doing in the first place. There's so many other things that can be done inside warehouses. A lot of them more customer facing, client facing, which is what people are very good at doing.
So the C tasks, so to say, the clients.
That's correct.
The creativity.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So Philip, let's maybe turn to you and turn to the trucks and the road again. Can there be found magic in the forwarding industry as well?
Well, look, when we founded InstaFreight back in 2016, we started with the vision to say we want to bring the click and buy, which from e-commerce, into the logistics space. And back in the days, and I'm not going to call out names again, but there were companies calling us crazy, saying okay, you want to give a quote in real time throughout the whole of Europe, just based on an algorithm that cannot be right. So this is not going to work. Right now, and I think Svi was saying this earlier in the first panel discussion, it's actually happening, right? And we were back in the days one of the first ones actually doing this. So I don't know if that calls magic, but to me, this is really a game changer to the industry, how you quote on spot loads. So this is certainly one example. The other example that comes to my mind is how to do the matching, right? So there's a load coming in, on our side as well. And how do you find the right carrier in order to execute the job? Because we don't have own wheels, right? So we are working with subcontractors. And the question is how to match that. In a traditional freight forwarder, what you do is you pick up the phone and try to call carriers. Well, there are limits to this, right? Our system right now is working simultaneously with around 150,000 trucks for every single load, basically poaching the right ones, like knowing where they're going. So this is something like in our day-to-day business, I would seriously still call magic. So those are the two examples at InstaFreight.
So I just read that you send trucks to China, from Europe to China. So I wondered about that. What is that about? Do you want to disrupt rail now, or is that a long-term project or just short-term?
That's actually like a good point from two perspectives. One is like we see ourselves as experts in overland. Overland is also rail. So in particular, when it comes to CO2 emissions, there's a very clear trend that we should get more stuff from the road to the rail. So that's something that we're actively working on. I mean, some of our customers, including Shell and some others, are actually giving us business already because we can provide capacity on rail. The China example is not Shell. Those are different companies.
And those are trucks, not rail, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of those examples like where you as a freight forwarder, you're often also like sort of like a problem solver if you want. And quite frankly, when COVID started, like when was it, like February, March or so, when it hit Europe, there was a severe increase of prices on sea, air, etc. And customers were reaching out to us, guys, can you help us getting stuff from China to Europe? And we were like, yeah, sure, we can do trucking. And yeah, this is basically what we did. So there were actually trucks on the road going from China into Germany and other European countries.
Okay, so maybe then about the last mile. I was thinking about that, and I was thinking maybe the last mile delivery, the door-to-door delivery, could be one of the oldest parts of logistics. It may be older than the wheel. So if you look at that, how can this be disrupted? How has e-commerce changed it? Maybe Johannes, what do you think about that?
I mean, how we see it at Seven Centers, it's the beauty of the last mile in Europe comes really with this diversity. So you're right. I mean, there are a lot of companies operating in the space for quite some time. And the cool thing is that they are constantly innovating and really pushing innovation forward. So if you go to France, you will see companies that are good with Pudo points, because 40% of the French people want to have their parcel delivered to a small shop. Another carrier is then good for the small lightweight stuff, and maybe good in the south, not so good in the north, and so on and so forth. So it's really diverse. For us, really the magic or our approach basically is to combine all these local last mile carriers, all these existing transportation networks, and then really decide on a parcel level. So you give me a parcel, and we then set up the supply chain that exists only for this one parcel for this very moment, and then to execute the best delivery for this parcel with terms of where is it delivered, when, or like in what kind of lead time, at what costs, at what additional service quality. And that's really the exciting part on our end when we look at our model and our platform, to really bring that into reality with all the different carriers, all the different options, to select the right one and then execute on this.
So Basil, you are one of the players on the last mile as well. And as we already heard, there's a lot of them, and there's also the big browns and the big yellows. So do you think there's still room for new players?
I mean, yeah, that's why we're here, exactly. But I think so. On the kind of I know we're talking about those, you know, the usual suspects, the brown and yellow players. So I think the main differentiator between the up and comers and those guys is those guys pretty much. And if you go to your post office now, they pretty much offer cookie cutter products. So they offer you like economy, priority, and you're typically as a retailer, you're kind of fitting into whatever their product is, whatever their network is, and kind of you're fitting into that mold pretty much. And I think the new up and comers on the last mile are like, you know, super customer focused in the sense that like they're like fitting products to retailers, kind of that vice versa. They're kind of flipping the game and saying,
so me as a customer, of course, I like to get my parcels delivered to my door. And I know in Germany, this is quite normal, but in the future, you know, it's also a big cost driver. Do you think it will be normal to get the parcel delivered to your door?
I mean, today, I mean, if you look at it today, right, this is the, this is the norm. I mean, people are trying to go with, I know like the stations and the lockers is now kind of like the new way to try and kind of minimize costs, centralize that delivery approach. I mean, that's kind of the new form. The door delivery, I think, is still going to be predominant. I mean, the last mile game, it's all about speed and convenience, right? You don't want it at your door, for example, now, especially during COVID, if you're working during the day, you're kind of disrupted. You probably don't want it at your door then. You probably want it at a locker, or you want to pick better kind of delivery times. So I think, it's all about convenience, I think, at the end of the day, and having the options in the last mile, I think that's going to be kind of a key differentiator.
So you just heard about the big potential of robots and drones in the warehouse. And I think some years back, there was a lot of talk about that for the last mile as well. But now I don't hear about that so much anymore. So Johannes, would you say those ideas failed?
No, I don't think so. But they have their niche, basically, where it totally makes sense to use them. And I also don't think that there's this one size fits all answer to what is the best delivery option on the last mile. So if you want to deliver stuff to remote places where maybe like the costs are not super important these days, I know that costs will come down in the future, but now maybe only the delivery to those remote places is your highest priority, then drone delivery totally makes sense. Do I see that basically as the standard delivery in big cities? Probably not in the next 3 to 5 years, but you really have.
I would say 20.
Fair enough, you're the expert there. But I think Dirk Reich mentioned it. We have 40 billion of funding on the logistics sector, and the major part of it goes into last mile innovation. And I think there will be even more models, and I don't see why we should not have like highly specialized carriers for different segments. Why not have a fashion last mile carrier, and so on and so forth? Yeah, so there's not this one solution that is best for everything, but you can really cherry pick on the last mile.
Yeah, drones are great when you have a high value to weight ratio. So you would not want to use a drone to deliver a pizza. It just makes no sense. You would want to use a drone to deliver medical supplies or devices and you need to do so in a hurry. That's the other extreme. And of course, there's a whole bunch of stuff in between.
So I just saw we have a question from the audience as well. And someone would like to know, how good are you prepared for cyber attacks? So maybe Raffaello, is there a risk that, some hackers will send your drones into the high stocking?
Yeah, I mean, you have to design an architecture system accordingly. I mean, we did the same thing with Kiva Systems, now Amazon Robotics. They have 500,000 of these mobile robots across their facilities, and they're not being hacked. It's because you take precautions. So just like you have antivirus software on your laptop, you have to take the right precautions when you architect your system.
So Basil, you just wanted to say something about drones as well. Are you afraid they're going to be hacked?
I mean, I didn't want to talk. I just want to say that on the practical application side, I mean, there's some serious great applications with like Zipline that are doing some great work across Africa. But it's also a regulation thing, right? With drones, you got to watch out. You can't just be flying them anywhere you want. You got to get CA approvals. So
unless you fly indoors.
Yeah, unless you fly in control areas, that works. But there's also too
So Claudius, I see you.
Okay, I don't want to.
I know what it means.
All right, I'll stop there.
I got one last questions for all of you, but you just have to answer with one word, maximum one sentence. I will not allow more. And that would be, so we talked a lot about disruption and about the state the disruption is in. So maybe if you look at it from 0 to 100%, what would you say? You're part of the industry. How disrupted is it already in a percentage? Maybe let's start with Basil.
In ours, I'd probably say it's a one word, 70%, I guess.
Johannes, you agree?
I mean, I leave that to the audience, the percentage. If I measure it by the amount of ideas to have to do things better, it's definitely a 0.
And Philip, from 0 to 70, where is your sector?
I'm having a hard time putting a number, but we are still in the very early days of digitization and disruption in that industry, and we're going to see a lot more to come. So that was one sentence.
Very good. That's better than when we practiced. So Raffaello, your sentence.
Can you see it? No, you can't because it's white. 0. I agree. We are always disrupting, and when we look back, we'll say, geez, things used to be so primitive. I think that's the case here.
Okay. So then if disrupt is regularly, maybe we have to make this panel regular as well. So thanks all of you.
And we are looking forward to having that again with you. And thank you very much for all your valuable time. I know as founders, you always have run on tight schedules. So thanks a lot. And also thanks a lot, Jacqueline, for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Our last panel tonight focuses on the key players behind the disruption. And when preparing for the session, I realized that each of the represented organizations, DSV, MSC, and Lufthansa, are each by themselves older than all the tech companies that you saw earlier combined. But obviously the question is that a burden or is it an advantage? And how can incumbents leverage their key capabilities and assets in order to compete in this newly digital age? To find answers to all these questions, I would like to hand over to a very good friend of Plug and Play, and the moderator of our next panel, Harald Ehren. Harald has held various positions as an editor and editor-in-chief for various newspapers like Financial Times Germany, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, Deutsche Verkehrszeitung, but was also affiliated with Sixt, with Booz & Company, and is currently the head of corporate communications for the leading German content and marketing PR agency, Fischer Appel. So, Harald, with this long introduction, thank you very much for joining, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Claudius. And honestly, I have to say it's a great honor to be in this book presentation and to be with such a fantastic panel. And I'm honestly getting a bit sentimental seeing all these companions and old colleagues like Sebastian, like Dirk, like Steffen, like Jacqueline being here on this book presentation. But actually, there is no need to be sentimental in the light of the panelists I'm going to introduce to you in a minute. What we are talking about actually are the key players behind the disruption. And actually, these key players are very special species, I would call them. And what I would like to discuss with the panelists is what strategic investors really like. I mean, coming back to institutional investors, they are actually now in the search of the next unicorn, whereas strategic investors are in the search for the best strategic relevance. Key players are mainly looking to improve their businesses and services with startups. So I'm asking now the panelists, how do startups drive change in the logistics industry for carriers, logistics, and air freight? And what role do incubators play in this context? What are the different styles of investment? First of all, I would like to introduce to you Boris Huske. Guten Abend. He is head of digital transformation at Lufthansa Cargo. And the next one I would like to introduce is René Farich-Olesen. Good afternoon. He is Group Chief Commercial Officer at DSV. And with us is also André Sima, Global Digital and Information Officer at MSC. Bonsoir, I would like to say. And hi, Mike Zayong, founder Plug and Play Supply Chain with Plug and Play Tech Center. I suppose it's already still morning where are you, isn't it?
That's right.
Well, actually, my first question goes to you in this context. Sebastian and Dirk, in the beginning of this book presentation, talked about this. So much money in the market, actually, at the moment. And with strategic investors, actually, why is still so much growth capital flow into logistics? And in which area in particular?
Sure. That was to me, right, Harold?
Yeah, this goes to you, Mike. Yes, it was a question to you.
Great. So I think it's an incredible time to be an investor and to be digitizing in the supply chain and logistics industry. Since I've started the supply chain program back in 2017, we've seen an increase in venture capital pouring into the market. And it just, even since COVID, has gone up like crazy. And I think some of the trends that we've seen, and a lot of this is driven by our corporate partners. Obviously, at Plug and Play, we're an institutional investor. So like you said, our goal is to invest in the next unicorn and provide a strong return on that investment. But we believe in the thesis that supply chain and logistics is being heavily disrupted and that there's so much opportunity for startups to emerge in the market. But one big part of Plug and Play in our value is like we like to work with the ecosystem, like the folks on the call today. We've engaged with in all different fashions. And I think it's incredible. We have leading, we have DSV, obviously a leader in kind of the 3PL space. We have Boris Hiske from Lufthansa Cargo, and then Andre from one of the largest maritime players. So we really have the whole supply chain here. And we survey our partners to find what are the key trends. And I think since COVID, the two biggest trends I've seen are, number one, the demand in e-commerce logistics. I think e-commerce has been a major trend as people have to shop online now. Before they had more of an option a lot of the time. And also the need for automation and safety. I think those are the biggest trends that we've seen, but supply chain has so many different areas that we're excited about. And that's why it's exciting for us to be investing in startups and accelerating them across the whole ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Mike. This is very interesting insights. Let me just forward my next question to Boris Hiske. Actually, what are the most relevant issues in logistics that can be solved using technology? Mike just mentioned automation, and in the panel before, Sri said that in the air cargo business, it was just 1 year ago, actually, people still had spreadsheets. What is actually the state of art in automation at the moment in your business?
I think logistics at the end is transports of goods and information. Yeah? And Sri also said information in our industry is in a lot of cases still on paper. Yeah? It's analog. And I think one major driver, it's a quite difficult one in an industry that is quite complex with quite many people and parties involved, is first of all to digitize that information, yeah, to really get data, because everything you do on paper or analog is quite lengthy and delayed process. It has a risk of mistakes and in copy and paste and all these things. So digitizing is one very important thing, and make this data available across the whole supply chain with all parties involved. That, I think, is already a major value driver within our industry that generates efficiency, that generates the potential of optimizing capacity, for example, in real time, taking into account weather information, network information, demand information. So it starts really with digitizing, and then with the whole topic of connectivity, connect all the parties involved in the supply chain and use the data. Yeah? And that could be done across parties involved, but also within each and every logistics company to optimize processes, to generate efficiency, to automate. That is, I think, the largest potential.
Yeah. I will address the other panelists later on with the question: what specific part of digitization is the most important one? Is it automation? Is it integration? Is it intelligence? But before we discuss these questions, I would like to go further on to Andre Sima and ask him, how do key players use digitization in logistics? Key players like you, and which topics are you interested in actually when you work with startups? Andre.
Well, thanks, Harold, for the question. Well, first of all, investing in startups is a tough job. And if you want to be an active investor, that really requires a very high level of, involvement, openness, and patience. So that's definitely something that we always take into consideration. I think today, of course, digitization of documents and data is essential to move forward, and getting rid of spreadsheets, that would be really great. But I think what everybody wants today is visibility. So that's a topic that I'm pretty keen on, and the fact that we're very interdependent on third parties for information convinced us a couple of years ago to pursue the IoT route, and more specifically look at smart containers. So that's somewhere where we've definitely invested, both on the containers and on the ships. We believe, of course, at MSC that adding tracking and monitoring devices to containers and connecting them to the internet is definitely part of the future of the shipping industry. So I think that's somewhere where we really see a potential. I mean, the market has been very slow, and I think it'll take quite some time to get to critical mass. But it's a bit like dog trying to catch this tail. You have to start somewhere. And so we're very keen on the smart containers in terms of investments. We're very keen on all the discussions around the interoperability. How can they talk to ports? How can they talk to vessels? We all share vessels and assets. So I think that's a topic where we're really very, very interested in. Wolfgang, a couple of minutes ago, and Boris spoke about documentation and digitizing documents and their data. And I think this is another domain where we are definitely partnering with some companies looking for simple, easy to use, regulatory friendly solutions for those critical documents. And as I like to say, visibility is essential, but of course, using the data for predictability is even more important.
Thank you so much, Andre. This was very, very interesting. Coming to you now, René, DSV as a major key player in transport and logistics, do players collaborate actually with startups in finding solutions? And what are your experiences in doing so, working together with startups in that sense?
Yeah, I would say the way that we typically address this is we run what we call the trend radar, looking at things that we think will impact us and our industry. And it actually starts with a little bit in a corporation like ours, and probably many others. It starts with a little bit of a willingness to actually disrupt yourself as well. So we can very quickly look at a trend radar and come to the conclusion that we do everything right, and the outside world is not going to influence us. I'm not sure that's the right approach. So what we do is we actually look at where can we apply new technologies to existing problems that we know of, or that we see in the future as well. Interestingly, we then go to the market using plug and play. For instance, Verity, who was on earlier, we've done a project with them and are rolling that out on drones in the warehouse at the moment. But we look at where can we apply it. So we provide, you can say, the playground also for the startups to actually go in and prove that the technology actually has legs to stand on in what we would call the real world as well. So that's how we approach the market in many different areas. I think I can only say what Boris and Andre are talking about in terms of visibility, intelligence, integration, extremely important. Robot automation as well, very important for us. And then one of the big things we see now is what can we do in terms of the more on the sustainability side. And that's in a way a disruption as well, but it's doing very much the same, but in a completely different manner as well. So that's how we address it in the way that we operate on a daily basis.
Let me add, René, let me add a question about incubators. Are there any incubators established by DSV, or is this not your investment style?
No, we don't at this moment in time. We don't approach the market in that way. We actually look. I think we can bring what I would call the use cases to the market. We can look at the startups, find the solutions, work with the startups to develop the solutions as well, mature them, and then we can actually apply the technology as well. So we are probably seeing ourselves more as users rather than innovators in that respect.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask.
That's our.
Sorry.
Go on.
Thank you so much, René. And I would like to pass on my next question to Boris. And well, I came through a quote which was like, we come from, you as the key players come from the physical transport side, going to digital solutions, whereas startups come from the digital side to the real world of logistics. Are there sometimes, you know, like disruptions within the system concerning key players working together with startups?
I think actually that is the main disruption itself. Yeah, it's the technology available out there, which is or could be a huge lever for this industry, really to advance services, to improve quality, to improve speed of our services. And the disruption is really that we as incumbents, we need to leverage that development. Yeah, we need to grow into digital, into tech. We need to acknowledge the importance of data and software within our systems. We need to invest in that to make it at all possible to achieve these new levels of service, of quality and speed. Yeah? And we all need to do that in a fairly complex world. Logistics is quite complex with many parties involved, many processes, regulations, a global network connected to that. And all that needs to be transferred somehow into tech. And that is the huge disruption taking place. And it requires also a willingness to understand that what's happening out there and how to get access to that knowledge. Yeah, and obviously the cooperation with startups could help to understand that development and jointly also develop certain solutions.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask all of you, and please raise your hands who's going to give the answer, is asking you, I think, Andre, you were the one who said visibility is crucial. Visibility is what everybody wants. So how do you work with startups together to establish this visibility via digitization? Is there any prerequisite actually they have to follow in that sense?
Well, let me dig out my magic ball. My crystal ball. No, I think that, you know, when we talk about visibility, I think visibility is getting easier with tech, obviously, and quite a few startups that I've been following along the years, particularly in IoT, you know, all come up with devices and you know, ways to consume less energy and a lot of these very important factors. So, of course, if we get to a point where we have a device that communicates with anything and costs, you know, $10, then probably everybody will be able to equip the containers more easily. But I think that what's essential, in my opinion, is that we manage, you know, to collect all the data. We manage to have some startups that are working on analytics are very precious. I think aggregating all the data that's, you know, coming from all sorts of sources around the world together with the visibility, I think that is what is going to give us predictability. That's my opinion.
Thank you so much. Mike, you're nodding in that sense. What are your experiences actually with startups and key players? I think one in the further panelists, someone said that, I think it was Wolfgang Lehmacher said, the crucial point is really the culture. You know, like those two cultures come together. This is also your actually analysis on this sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The startups and the corporates are coming from two different worlds, and they're now starting to intersect more. And where we're lucky at Plug and Play is we're trying to bridge the gap between those two worlds, and we're trying to make sure our corporate partners are able to successfully, like DSV, for example, pilot and actually work with these startup companies and actually integrate them so there's a larger solution down the line. That's the big goal. But you're right, they're completely different games. And at the end, I mean, we're lucky because we talk to the startups every day, we talk to the corporate partners every day, and we try and find synergies between them. But I think the big goal that we recommend for our corporate partners is how they can do just a quick test or pilot of the startup company. I think that's always the best place to get started from our recommendations. Like a lot of our partners sometimes like to invest or do more with the startup companies, but that's kind of where we like to get the process started, is just to find these solutions that we know are being utilized in the market. And I think that's why I'm so proud of our supply chain and logistics program. We have the office in Hamburg and in Europe, but we also are connecting partners in Arkansas, in Bentonville with Arkansas, or with the Walmart and Tyson Foods and Silicon Valley, and now Toronto, Canada. So we keep expanding it internationally. And I think there's a lot of learnings the corporate partners see. We see the same thing happening in different geographies, but the startups are coming from different markets and able to pilot and actually work with these companies. So definitely it's difficult to bring these cultures together, but it's a lot of fun for us to try and make it happen.
Thank you so much. René, what about culture? Everybody is talking about culture. I got the impression that at DSV, culture is quite important, but numbers and the products, the solutions are more important than the culture. This is right.
Yeah, of course, but it's an attitude. You know, I call it the not invented here syndrome, and all companies have got that and saying, yeah, but what I've been doing for the last 10 years is obviously right. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been doing it that way. So we have to get over that hurdle in any new idea that we come with as well. So for instance, in what we call the innovation lab, if I take the example with Verity as well, we started out with the ideas sort of on a prototype level, the idea of using drones for cycle count in the warehouse. Okay. And people looked at us as if, you're nuts, how would that work? And then we actually got a drone in, and we did a video, the most boring video in the world, but that included a drone and a drone pilot as well. And it was dreadful, but it was more to show the concept. And then everybody said, okay, we sort of see the concept now, but there's no business case because the drone pilot was more expensive than the guys in the warehouse. So we said, yeah, but now we go to the autonomous drone. And that's what we did with Verity. So suddenly we had the concept, the visualization of the concept, the realization of the concept, and very important in DSV, the business case as well that came with it. And suddenly we get the momentum out of that. So I think, and that may be slightly a difference between some of the new players coming in, at least initially coming in. The demand on delivering a result is not as high as it is on us as the traditional player as well. So we have to do it within the constraints. We have to develop our business. We have to do the right, because else we won't be in the market moving forward. So we have to invest and make a profit at the same time. And that's a genuine challenge. And then we have to also challenge the existing infrastructure that we live within as well. You can't change everything every day in an organization of that size. Things do take a little bit more time. But we try to challenge that way around. I think the drone example has worked really well for us in saying, yeah, there was a lot of resistance, and there's a lot less resistance once we go through it. And we actually find not only is a good idea, it has value for the customer, it has value internally, and there's actually a good business case along with it as well. So that tends to work a little bit.
Sounds all very pragmatic, and now Claudius already is appearing, although we just came.
I'm very sorry for that. I'm very happy and fortunate that I can continue to be part of René and Luca's journey with DSV, which is very nice. And I know that a lot of people in the audience would love to listen to all of you for like 3-4 hours, because you have so many interesting stories to tell and so many interesting insights and perspectives. So at this point in time, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And also, Harald, to you, that was great. Thank you so much. It was very, very interesting having you with us. And now I would like to turn back to our two co-authors and to our co-hosts also of tonight's event with Luca and Christian. if they are back. Luca and Christian? Well, Christian, here you are. That's great. So, after hearing all these great panels tonight, what are your key takeaways?
Well, first of all, I'm quite flushed. This is the first time we all come together in one call in one event, and I must say, this is much better than reading the book, I'm afraid. So I'm really, really flushed. I'll try to make it short. I mean, my takeaway from panel one is we saw, first of all, I mean, there's big money involved. Wolfgang mentioned like conservatively 15, 30% of cost savings, 40 to 70% of time reduction. The logistics industry is catching up comparing to 1963. On the passenger side, we're still a long way to go. But what I liked most is that actually technology is not the key bottleneck. The bottleneck or enabler, whatever you want to call it, is culture, is adoption. This is what is really key. And for achieving this, collaboration amongst the various players is the absolute key driver. And I think that was driven home very, very nicely. In the second panel, we've seen a large variety of business models. And we've seen there's not one size fits all or like one solution fits all. There's everything from the warehouse to the last mile, and each of them has their own unique perspective. I found our panelists were very, very modest about their part in the disruption. But there was many instances when the solutions are rolled out, they're indeed magic. And also I like the part with the quiz, where are we from 0 to 100? And I think the majority says we're pretty early stages still. And then in the last and the third panel, we also seen that the topic we're having here at hand, it's larger than any one individual party, whether it's the disrupting technology provider, the startup, or whether it's the carrier, it's a forwarder. Each one of them holds one dimension of it, and between the interplay between the three, this is where really the change is coming from. It's not just maybe like in e-commerce where there's one monolithic player like an Amazon. There's many elements of it, and also here, collaboration and the team effort is everything. That for me is the biggest takeaway. Where the topic is larger than any one of us, and by collaborating, by learning from each other, we're getting stronger and we're seeing where the value is.
This is great. And I think the book project, where so many collaborated and brought together those ideas, is a prime example of such a get together and to bring those ideas together. Okay. Luca, this actually leaves me with one more question for you. What's next?
What's next? Oops, I think I'm muted. Nope, I'm not. What's next? So first, of course, it's about the publication of the book, yeah? And this happened tonight. So the ebook is already available on various bookstores, be it Amazon or other also local bookstores. But the hard copy is now distributed in these days. Yeah? So and I'm one of these first lucky guys who finally have it in their hand. So yeah, the one for which we have sweated and worked, of course, a lot with all the co-authors. And yeah, but I mean, don't forget tonight we only saw a number of these co-authors, and there are many more of experts who have contributed to that project. So as we said, it's 26 co-authors, 21 articles, so a lot more to find out. And yeah, if you want also to find more out, we have a website for the project, disrupting-logistics.com. So visit that and find more information there. And then we love to get your feedback and start into discussion with interested practitioners. So at the end, it's about a large community we have started to create and which is always happy to find new members and to foster exchange and this collaboration we have been talking about. Yeah. So if you have ideas, reach out and yeah, and we know technology is further evolving. So this is of course printed on paper at the moment and it's further evolving. So there might be continuation and much more to talk about in future. And last but not least, I would really like to thank also here officially all co-authors and today's panelists in this great launch event. So without
thank you very much.
thank you also. Without your contribution, the book and also this event would have not been possible. And of course, also very big thank you to Plug and Play, to Claudius and the whole team, and yeah, for co-hosting this event and supporting us strongly in setting it up. And yeah, looking forward to foster this exchange and see how technologies will further evolve. Yeah, to make our supply chain more efficient and customer friendly and sustainable.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Luca. And I think when we first started discussing about this event 4 months ago, we didn't expect that much attention to it. So maybe that was just the first iteration of this format. And we should definitely stick our heads together in the upcoming weeks and see how we can have a second iteration maybe in the next month. So thanks to both of you. Thanks also for co-hosting with us. And that leaves me, as initially said, with pointing out that we have our Supply Chain Expo coming up on the 26th of March, where Luca will also speak again, but we'll also have Markus Sontheimer giving a keynote as the CIO and CDO of DB Schenker. We have the colleagues from Dell Technologies with us, Valenius Wilhelmsen, Shell, and as said, DB Schenker. So this is great, and we are looking forward to this event on the 26th of March. What's left for me at this point in time is that I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. A big thank you to all the authors and the initiators of this format, especially to Luca and Christian, and to all speakers and panelists who made today's event such a great success. And last but not least, also from my side, a big thank you to the whole operations team of Plug and Play, who made this event flow so smoothly. We're looking forward to having you with us on the 26th of March for our European Supply Chain Expo. And with that, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you soon again. Stay healthy and safe, and goodbye.